The Square Ball Podcast.
Welcome to the Square Ball Weekly Show number 260. I'm Dan and Michael. This is Moscow White as well. Show is brought to you with Levi Solicitors. 10% discount on your legal fees at levisolicitors.co.uk/the Square Ball. 15% off your legal fees on conveyancing instructions until the end of January 2022. This is part 2 of the show then, where we will preview the upcoming match. We are playing Newcastle at home, 3 o'clock on a Saturday, which is something of a rare beast in this modern era of Premier League football. Sum them up in a sentence.
Rich but shit is what I wrote. Is what I wrote on the prep sheet, and it probably, that kind of is where they are right now. They got rid of Bruce though. At least that fixed him, because he was always the problem, wasn't he?
Well, Mike Ashley's gone, so they've now got excellent ownership, impeccable.
Well, we feel good factor.
I know we are just joking around to hideously tempt fate here, but the bare facts of it are: Bruce had 10 games, couldn't get a win. Eddie Howe's now had 10 games, and they've only got 1 win, 4 draws, 5 defeats. They look to be in a world of trouble, and the most recent game against Watford, they weren't good, were they? And I know they're kind of pinning all the hopes on getting more players in, but you wonder if that'll fix it for them.
The games are running out for them, aren't they? That's the thing. It's if they need to win this. A few weeks ago, it looked like it would be must-win for us. Probably not anymore. We win, we're pretty much comfortable, I would say, certainly for several months. We'll probably be all right. A draw's no good for them anymore.
I was going to say,
they need to win this.
I made this point on the match ball, didn't I? Like, a draw is fine for us now. Having won at West Ham, it would keep them at the same distance that they are now.
I mean, I think we should win.
Yeah. Because
it just make things nice and comfortable for us for a while, as I say. But they've got to win at some point, haven't they? They can't just keep saying we'll buy some more players, because they've only got a couple of weeks left to do that. And truthfully, they need about 10, because most of their team is not very good.
No, it's not. I mean, I watched all of the Watford game, and it was a remarkably low quality game, was that. And it actually goes back to what you were saying. I think it was on the match ball, Moscow, and something you've said across the season is that we've always had more in the tank at Leeds. It's always felt like we've got more, even if it's just latent quality in there on the displays of this season. But it feels like we're starting to see more of it now. Whereas with Newcastle, you just wonder where they can get to if they don't sign anybody else. I'd say it looks like the Championship, doesn't it? But the qualifier here is that there are 4 teams down there and only 3 can go down.
Yeah, I mean, they will probably come out of the transfer window with a far better squad than they went into it with, which I don't think will be the case for Norwich or Burnley or Watford. So they probably will still always have a chance, because those 4 do look all pretty terrible. It's probably going to be like last season, where we were panicking about Fulham catching us for absolutely ages, and then in the end, like 30 points would have been enough to stay up. And when you look at how far off 30 points we are, there's really not very much to go at all. So you just don't know where that mark is going to be, though, do you? And if we win this, it puts us needing so few points, actually, from the remainder of the season, that we can probably be relatively comfortable. And
just going back to the experience of earlier in the season when we wore the lilac kit and we didn't get the Dan James penalty, we should have beaten them that game, shouldn't we, really? We let them get a foothold back in the game.
Was it Junior Firpo's miss?
Yeah, he volleyed it over the bar from about 6 yards.
He was talking about that last week as well in his interview on Radio Leeds. He's not forgotten, because he was asked about attacking and how he felt about going forward, and he's like, well, you've seen me in the box. And he was like, as if it was still kind of bothering him, and he was like, I hope I score a goal soon to kind of put that behind me. It is now, when you look at Newcastle's results, they've won 1 game, 1-0 against Burnley, and it does feel,
which almost doesn't count.
No. And it's it is a kind of a big miss in our season, I think, that we didn't get the points up there. We didn't play badly, did we?
No, first half we were all over them. We should, like I say, we could have been 2 or 3 up by the time that Firpo's put it over the bar. We've had what was a Stonewall penalty not given. They'd had a couple of chances, but we looked by far the better team in that game. And the game was disrupted a bit with, I think Ayling and Bamford both went off injured, didn't they?
Yeah, it's the day when Bielsa was saying last week that he asked Bamford to keep playing even though he was injured, and we had all sorts of problems. But it was interesting, the start of our game against West Ham, when we had Forshaw and Firpo, and if you look at how good we were, I know it's all ifs and buts because it didn't happen because they were injured, but if only that starting 11 had played the whole game, would we have won 10-0 as I felt like we might, but whenever we've got not even the full first team but close to it, we've looked good again. You can't really say this is talking about us again instead of Newcastle, but what was really different from our performance at West Ham and the best of last season? Absolutely the same, but Dan James is a striker and Bates in midfield and Yelders at left back, and yet somehow we found a level of performance that took us to 9th last season. Newcastle, no matter, I don't care who they sign, I don't care how good the players are that they put on the pitch, I just don't see them getting out of the first half of the season. 22 games, well, the 2 were postponed, so they've played 19 or 20. They've played a lot of games and they've won 1, and I just don't see. I don't know who they.
They've played 20.
I don't know who they think they can sign, or how many players they think they can sign that is immediately going to just turn them into a team that wins games. Because it just, if they couldn't be, Chris Wood, Kieran Trippier, good signings on paper, spent a lot of money. We know that they have certain skills and abilities that you'd think would be helpful, and they drew with Watford, who were awful. So what's your way out, Newcastle? Your way out, Dan.
If Newcastle, looking at their fixtures, if they're going to get out of it, it's going to be within the next month, because they play us, Everton, Villa, West Ham, Brentford, Brighton. If they can't get the points out of those games, then they're into like the end of the season, and already they're simply run out of matches there.
Yeah, and already it's a massive asking, isn't it? So as each game goes by, it's tough, isn't it? It's funny, I see parallels with us earlier in the season with Newcastle in that, I say this as an outsider, I don't watch them every week, but you get the impression it's almost give it to St. Maximin and hope that something happens, which was a little bit like us earlier in the season when we were kind of devoid of ideas, injuries had bit, and it was like, give it to Rafinha and hope something happens. Whereas actually we feel like a lot more of a rounded team now based on the West Ham performance and the way things have been sort of gradually creeping forward in recent weeks.
Yeah, I mean, people like Harrison coming back into a bit of form, he was so badly out of sorts at points this season, wasn't he? But because of weaknesses in the squad and injuries, we just had to keep playing him, basically. So, I mean, there was, whereas we would have probably had James playing instead of him for a time, James was needed to play up front. So we had to keep Harrison there, and there was just a lack of options.
I was going to say, it goes back to, remember in the Championship, in was it the promotion season, where we were saying just give Bamford a rest when he was out of form, but we didn't have the luxury of doing that, and we had to kind of just play our way through it and play back into form. But on the flip side of that is huge credit to them for going through it and coming out the other side and playing their way back into form, and it feels like we've sort of done that a little bit this season.
Yeah, I mean, Newcastle have never hit anything like form. I mean, they followed up their 1 win with 3 losses on the bounce. Admittedly, Liverpool and Man City and Leicester are not exactly easy teams to beat, but there's nothing there. And in looking at Eddie Howe's games that he's had, if you're going to go through as a relegation team and pencil in games, you're probably targeting wins like Brentford and Norwich at home and Watford at home. You think, well, you've got to probably get something from those, and to scrape a few draws out of them is not enough. So.
They drew 1-1 away to Watford at the end of September, and then they drew 1-1 at home to Watford. So for all they've spent in this window, they've got no better. And House replaced Bruce. They've got no better.
Well,
Chris Wood's an interesting.
Well, I was just going to say we've got another chance to look at Chris Wood about what I was about to come on to. So let's do him.
Would you have brought him back? Because it's maybe easing a little bit now, but last week we had no strikers, and we watched Newcastle sign Christopher Wood for 25 million, and they clearly believe he can score enough goals to overhaul the teams above them. Should we have gone for him?
No, not for that money.
No, not for over 20. But that's the price of a footballer these days, isn't it?
If he was available on loan for 3 months, yes, or for £5 million, maybe.
I mean, it might be enough to snooker Burnley, but then you've obviously got to then overcome Watford, which is why I think there was almost double jeopardy placed on the game last week.
Would you, if the price was no object, would you want him back?
I think he's a perfectly good Premier League striker.
That's what I said to my mate, who's a Newcastle fan, who texted me about what's he like, and I said, well, he's a perfectly fine Premier League striker. He's not, he's not going to be a Champions League.
He's quite good in the air.
Level goal scorer, is he?
Reasonable technically, sort of knows where to stand.
Work rate.
It's fine. Probably not for us. Fine for most teams. But yeah, I wouldn't have been desperate to have him back. I think, as a rule, I tend to not want us to sign players who we've already had because it just rarely works. And when you look back, it's one of those things that we seem to get obsessed with, having players that they've had before. It's like the 10 years we had to be linked with Alan Smith.
Brian Dean's second spell was fine.
Brian Dean's second spell was fine.
Lee Chapman's not so much.
John Lukic's second spell, won the title.
True, but his first spell was, I don't know, it was in a weird wilderness period. People tend to want to bring back like people who did, like Chris Wood, because he scored 30 goals with it. It's like, he'll do that again.
David Batty was all right.
Times change.
Yeah, when GFH promised they were going for Gradle.
Yeah, then for zero money. We put in a bid of £10. Let's see if it's accepted.
You know, if
Gradle back.
If GFH was still in charge, they'd be going for him now at 34 years old. One of the stars of AFCON. But as it is, it's Chris Wood. As we're saying about, like, in the run up to the West Ham game, I think the same almost applies to Chris Wood here. Is you know what you're going to get. You know what we're going to face this weekend in the shape of Chris Wood. I guess the issue is he's cutting off supply to St Maximin is how you win this, isn't it? And playing on the front foot. And I think it feels like at the minute Leeds United are playing on the front foot, and that this win, I mean, 2 wins on the bounce, 100% record in 2022 in the league, best record in the division.
I mean, how many games?
Is it 2?
I mean, it's 2 games. That's another way of putting it. But I suppose to look at it another way, that's twice as many as Newcastle have won all season. So
yeah.
So that's good, isn't it? We've done that in just a couple of weeks.
And I think, obviously, we can leave it up to Bielsa and the players to go, like, how do we deal with Chris Wood, put Pascal Stroik on him? That would be my answer. And then, cutting off supply to St Maximin, and who's, can we stifle Shelby's creativity? I think we just beat them because they're a bunch of losers.
Go down well.
Well, they are. They've won once, and they've not even drawn that many.
I mean, this is that massive banana skin, isn't it, of when we sit here and we predict games, and like you look at it and you look at all the evidence, where we are, where they are, you say we should win this. Not necessarily at a canter. I think that would be being disrespectful, but based on the two teams, confidence, how they're playing, how we've played in recent weeks, there's no reason why we shouldn't.
And the influence of pressure comes to bear as well, because Newcastle have to win this game, otherwise they've no hope. But then they really had to beat Watford, and they drew. And us, under the pressure when we needed to start the year with a win over Burnley, and we just beat them 3-1. It wasn't a problem. I don't think our peers, and I think there's maybe, I don't know if it's not an advantage to being in this part of the table, but it's become pretty clear to Leeds United what we need to do now, which is not get relegated, get out of the situation that we're in, beat the teams around us, and stop fussing. Whereas in the earlier part of the season, when we still hadn't worked out if are we going for Europe? Is that dream still alive? Are we gonna get relegated? What is the team trying to do this season? It was all a bit unclear, and so there was a sense of kind of disappointment. Whereas with that clarity against Burnley of they are a rival, if we don't beat them, we're in danger of going to the Championship, and we win. And I think we're responding to pressure better than this bunch of dirty money losers.
That's the thing. It's a shame almost that it's happened to Newcastle, because I used to quite like him in a way, and I want Newcastle in the Premier League because I like it as an away ground. I want to go there because it's fun.
We've always felt quite similar, but it's great parallels between the two clubs in terms of one club city, and
it's just impossible to love them now.
Can't root for them, can you?
No, you just think, well, I basically only want bad things to happen to them.
Yeah.
So
in the new issue of the Square Ball magazine, Miles Rowcroft has written about what Newcastle may end up paying for the success that they may or may not have, not this season, but the idea of Manchester City now can't sell out the stadium anymore. A lot of the passion has gone. They get to Wembley and nobody wants to go because they were there 3 seasons running, and Newcastle of all clubs to kind of trade in what they have been for that. And he has a great line where he says, if you met a Newcastle United fan, you'd always think you can have a conversation with them about football. You'd start, what good players have you got and how are you doing this season? It would be an interesting kind of just a football fan to football fan conversation. Whereas now you come up against this wall, and it's not all of them, obviously. There's still the nice people who've retained some dignity and integrity and self-respect. But you come up against this wall of, well, we've got £200 million, so we're going to sign Mbappe. and that total lack of realism and lack of interest. 'Cause that's not even an interesting thing to do, is it? It's like, I'd love to watch Messi playing for Leeds, but it's not an interesting attitude, and it's then hilarious when they sign Chris Wood and get relegated anyway.
Yeah, I mean, all things being equal, we win this one, don't we?
You can't argue otherwise. we are better than them, and at home, and in better form.
And we earn Eddie Howe the sack with Rafa Benitez.
It would not surprise me at all if they
and
did
it would
that.
be bloody brilliant, especially now that it looks like, I mean, Everton have their own problems that Benitez stepped into, but I don't think he's the manager he was. So certainly the evidence of since leaving Newcastle points that way. So the perfect new messiah to keep them in the Championship for the next 3 or 4 seasons. I would welcome. But then, I mean, I don't know if Eddie Howe gets them promoted.
I mean, I think Eddie Howe would probably be quite grateful to be sacked, because I'm sure he's paid well. He'd essentially probably be getting like a few million quid for a couple of months' work. Lovely stuff.
I'd do it.
Yeah, great stuff. I'm on.
Maybe stay out the embassy though.
Yeah.
That wraps up part 2 then of the Square Ball Weekly Show number 260. Hang about for Heroes and Villains, part 3 of the show on the way for you.
The Square Ball Podcast.